Despite the ceasefire in Gaza, police in the UK are cracking down on pro-Palestine activists like never before. This video from London shows a night raid on the home of someone suspected of belonging to the group Palestine Action. But now we at Declassified have uncovered new evidence that appears to vindicate the group's highly controversial strategy of direct action at arms factories that it says are supplying Israel. Joining me to discuss this is my colleague John McAvoy, who's just published his investigation on Declassified's website. Can we start by talking about what's become one of the most controversial protests by Palestine Action, which has seen around 18 of their members being held in prison awaiting trial, and that's the case of the Elbit factory in Filton. Can you tell us about what's happened there with Palestine Action and what your research has showed about what that company's been doing during the genocide in Gaza?
So there's been, major actions at the Elbit's Filton site, which is based in Bristol, and the activists actually caused around, at least according to the police estimates, more than £1 million worth of damage there. And the police have cracked down enormously on Palestine Action, particularly relating to this action. Active or alleged activists have been raided under counter-terror legislation. Some activists are being held on remand, awaiting trial. They might not even get a trial within the next year. So these are really repressive measures that the UK government is taking against Palestine actionists. In this article, what we found, this is published in collaboration with Irish news site The Ditch, what we found is that many of these factories in the UK, and particularly those associated with Elbit Systems, Israel's largest arms manufacturer, including this Filton site, have been exporting items to Israel over the past 16 months amid the Gaza genocide. And that is the claim, the very specific claim that Palestine Action has been making over the past 16 months, that there are factories in the UK that are directly complicit in the Gaza genocide by way of their exporting weapons and components for weapons to Israel. So what we found is, and this is based on cargo documents that Declassified and The Ditch obtained and that we've sifted through over the past months, in fact. A shipment was made from the Filton site to an Elbit factory in Israel last year.
And I should say you approached Elbit for comment, and the company denies any wrongdoing. It says it fully complies with UK export laws. But we know that those laws have all sorts of carve-outs and loopholes that enable certain types of weapons to still be exported to Israel, despite the genocide and despite Labour's kind of partial suspension of some arms export licenses. But yeah, you found that at the Instro Precision site in Kent, this is a factory that Palestine Action has repeatedly targeted over the last year. And you've seen evidence that they've actually been continuing to export items to an arms factory in Israel.
If you look at Instro Precision's financial statements on Companies House, you'll find that they acknowledge that they're fully owned by Elbit Systems. This is an Elbit subsidiary. Worryingly, what Instro Precision manufactures is electro-optical sensors. So, we're talking about things like sniper lenses and so on, items that have quite a clear military use in the current genocide in Gaza. We found several exports from this very site to an Elbit site in Israel. So we don't just have, this factory exporting items to who knows where in Israel. We've located the delivery location to an Elbit factory in Israel. So, it seems to us to be beyond doubt that they are exporting components for military use in Israel. And as you said, Palestine Action have, caused, once again, over £1 million worth of damage to this factory in Kent. And so our findings seem to vindicate what Palestine Action have been doing. They've long argued that, these factories are complicit in the colonisation, the occupation, and now the genocide of the Palestinians. And now that we've found that they've been exporting to Israel throughout the last 16 months, to me, it shows that they've been proven correct.
Yeah, it's a really interesting reaction from Huda Ammori, the co-founder of Palestine Action, who you asked to comment on your article. We've interviewed her on this channel a couple of times before, saying that your findings vindicate what her group has been doing. So it'll be really interesting to see if they're able to use this perhaps in court in some of their defences at upcoming trials. Are you able to tell us a bit more? I know you have to be quite secretive sometimes with your methods as an investigative journalist. How you've been able to see these cargo documents? Are you able to sort of shed any more light on that for the viewers?
I mean, it's not possible at present to say specifically how we obtained the documents, but what we can say is we've sifted through over the past 2 or 3 months, in fact, because we've been looking at cargo documents which relate to F-35 shipments, both to Israel and to the US, which can then be onward exported to Israel, but also the private companies that have been exporting to Israel over the past 16 months. So we've sifted through, thousands of these documents, and they provide, crucial details about where the shipments are going from, and where they are arriving and the dates and so on and so forth. The UK's arms export licensing continue to say that it has the most robust arms export licensing regime in the world. And as we know at Declassified and elsewhere, that's total nonsense. And one of the key problems is we only find out what kind of licenses have been granted to certain countries much after the events have taken place, right? So we only get the data from the Department for Business and Trade, 6 months, a year after the crimes have taken place. But these cargo documents have allowed us to actually show in real time, or much closer to the event than the arms export licensing data, what's been happening, how the UK government has been facilitating F-35 components shipments from RAF Marham British Air Base in Norfolk, and how the arms companies have been shipping to Israel as well. I think this methodology has proven incredibly important to expose UK complicity in the genocide.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the Elbit Horizon site in Filton near Bristol, the Instro Precision site in Kent. Can you tell us as well what's been happening in Wrexham in North Wales at one of the arms factories there?
The Ciensko site in Wrexham, that reportedly, according to Airframer, produces composites for Elbit's Hermes 450 drone. That drone has been used by Israel throughout the genocide to commit, endless war crimes. One of those was the airstrike on 7 international aid workers, including 3 Britons who were working for the World Central Kitchen organisation back in April 2024. The former site manager of Solvay, which then became Ciensko, they admitted in court following action by Palestine Action that company was also producing composites for the F-35s, and they were sending them on to another company, and then they were getting onward exported to Lockheed Martin. So there's been another action at this site as well, and we found, once again, exports from Wrexham to Israel. We've also found evidence of exports from Martin Baker, which is an engineering firm based in the UK. It produces the ejection seats for various different fighter jet aircraft, but Martin Baker has specified to Declassified that the exports to the Elbit site in Carmiel that we found, they were specifically for trainer aircraft. And that is beyond, in fact, the September announcement by David Lammy, where, as many viewers will know, around 30 export licenses were suspended. Now, the UK is still allowed, or UK companies are still allowed, to export items for Israeli trainer aircraft, where Israeli pilots can learn how to use the aircraft and presumably continue on and use that experience and that training in airstrikes on Gaza. So the UK government's claim that these components don't have a military use, to me, is absurd.
And John, where does this fit in the wider picture? I mean, we've been talking about Palestine Action activists doing demonstrations at these factories, being arrested, being held on remand, going to trial, criminal cases being lodged against them. But where do you think the wider kind of political climate is now in the UK? I know the Conservatives, Suella Braverman, were very hardline in their rhetoric about groups like Palestine Action, Just Stop Oil even. Do you think Labour's going to be any different? Will it have more respect for civil liberties?
I mean, what we've seen over the past week or so is that they have perhaps even less respect for civil liberties. I mean, it's quite incredible what we've seen over the past week, right? We had, the former leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer's predecessor, Jeremy Corbyn, as well as the former Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, being questioned by the police. And so this is, I think, far more significant than what we already saw under the Conservatives. It must be noted as well that one of Palestine Action's most fierce opponents is John Woodcock, also known as Lord Walney, who remains the UK government's so-called independent advisor on political violence. Now, John Woodcock, who's advising the government, has called on Palestine Action to be banned in official reports, in public statements. And John Woodcock, as we revealed last year in Declassified UK, has accepted funding from Elnet, which is a pro-Israel lobby organisation. He also works alongside arms lobbying organisations which have connections to Leonardo, which is involved in the arms trade supplying Israel. So we have someone who's supposedly an independent advisor to the UK government with several conflicts of interest directly relating to his attempted crackdown on Palestine Action. So, I mean, it goes without saying that he should be removed from his position immediately. But he's just one element within the wider crackdown on Palestine solidarity in the UK, which is incredibly worrying.
Thanks, John. As always, your work raises important questions about people in power, the global arms trade, and UK complicity in genocides like what we've seen in Gaza. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please hit the button below. It helps the video reach a wider audience. And if you want to support John doing more investigations like this, you can make a donation through the Super Thanks button or head to our website where you can join Declassified from £3 a month. Thanks for watching.